I'm Kevin Morrison. I was born in Sydney, Nova Scotia, and I grew up on the corner of Townsend and George, which was known as the Gaza Strip. And there was something in the water because of all the talented players that came out of there. The guys that came from the Gaza Strip that lived there, along there, and within a block radius of Sydney Forum were Parker McDonald, John and Junior Hanna, Fabian Joseph, Kevin Morrison, Normie Ferguson. I didn't learn how to skate on a rink or at a rink. My mother took us boys to Nelga Beach off Kings Road, and she'd put the skates on us, and we'd skate across the harbor and back, and that's how we got our feet wet, but learning how to skate. And from there, I lived across the street from Redwood Park, and Mom would send us out with our net, which would have been 2 boots and a puck, and send us to Redwood Park with the shovel to clean the snow off, and we'd skate there till dark, and then we'd head home and thaw out, have some supper, and she'd send us back out, because there was one light at that. I think there's still only one light at Redwood Park right by the little bridge. We used to play under that every night and every Saturday, Sunday. So, following those days, I went to Sydney Minor Hockey, school hockey, and I played nets for the St. Joseph's school hockey team. So I tried out for the team, but I wasn't a very good skater. So the coach put me in nets. So I played nets for 3 years. And then I didn't play for a while. I took 3 years or 4 years before I played midget. And that's when I became a rink rat at Sydney Forum. And we used to have to clean the ice, sweep the stands, and there was no pay involved, but we got free ice. Wherever there was a free ice time, we could skate, and as long as we cleaned the ice and had it ready for a game or a rental. And this, like on weekends, we'd go in on weekends after everything was gone, and we could skate all night till the next morning. Ernie Hanna grew up on the Strip, and he was a coach, and he asked me if I wanted to play midget hockey, and I went with the Sydney Kinsman Minor midgets at that time, and played with some guys that like Keith Leviev. He ended up going away off that team. I went away. Lawrence Curry went away. So we had a few guys that went away from that team, and I played left wing, and I scored a bunch of goals, and I did all right. And then the following year we had I went to juvenile. I played with the CJCB 1270s, and I played with the Sydney Academy high school team and the Sydney Academy interscholastic team. And we won our CJCBs, we won our league, and the Sydney Academy team won their division. And the interscholastic team, I think we lost in a 2-game total goal against Wolfville. And it was at one of these games where the New York Rangers scout was Soupy Campbell. He was a local guy with the Rangers, and he happened to be at a game where I scored 5 goals before the middle of the second period, and he asked if I'd be interested in going to Kitchener Rangers of the OHA. And I said yes. And at the end of the season, I was scouted by the New York Rangers through his advice, and I became New York Ranger property. So that summer, we had Scotty Bowman, who was coach general manager for the Halifax Junior Canadians. He came down, he wanted me to go to Halifax to play with them. So Mom had him in the living room and gave him tea and cookies and entertained him. And I had already signed to go with Kitchener and Drummondville, so I couldn't go to I couldn't get my release to go to Halifax. So I might have missed an opportunity there, but I didn't mind going to. Well, I never got to Kitchener. I ended up going to Drummondville because they had they used to be allowed 8 province-to-province transfers. Kitchener was, and they were cut back because the OHL was too strong, and they limited them to 6. So myself and Paul Ross from Toronto were asked if we'd go with Drummondville, play in the Quebec League. So I had no problems with that. So, and neither did Paul. We both went there, and we took our licks the first year, but We ended up winning a championship the second year, which was great. So, okay, I was at training camp, and we're standing in the corner, and there was only a couple of guys on the team that could speak a little French, and we're in the corner, and I said, "What are we doing here?" And Jocelyn says, "Oh, qui vient, you skate backwards." I said, "What?" I said, "I don't skate backwards." "Oh, no, you go up to the blue line, turn around, go backwards, go over here backwards, come down here, get in the corner." I said, "Not a chance am I doing that, make a fool of myself." So I would, when I got to the head of the line, I would back through the line and get at the end of the line so I wouldn't have to go. And then the coach would say, "Okay, get on the other side. Go to the other corner, we're going to do it again." And I was doing the same thing, backing into the thing. I figured I had it licked, until I bumped into this guy, and I turned around, and it was the coach. He says, "Monsieur Morrison?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You have a problem with the drill?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What?" I said, "I can't skate backwards." "You what?" I said, "I can't skate backwards. I play left wing, I go forward, hit somebody, turn around, get up, come back, hit somebody. No backwards." So after practice that day, he started me with Jocelyn, and they taught me how to skate backwards. And then the next year, I was a defenseman and an all-star. So worked out good. That Jocelyn was a good coach. But they had well, I was 17 years old, and they caught me having a beer or two, so they hired a chaperone for me. And curfew was 11 o'clock at night the night before a game. And he would come in, knock on the door, come in the house, and he'd go to my room, make sure I was in my room, in my bed. I wasn't allowed out. He'd park out front and wait for me to stay. He followed me around for a year. And he was a nice old guy, but I mean, he didn't know that my roommate slept in my bed more than I did because I was going out the back door. The second year, Marcel Dion came to our training camp. He was 14 years old, and he was the best player on the ice. And even at 14 years old, and like I was 17, going to be 18, and Marcel and Jocelyn and those other guys were 20. So he's basically a teenager, no, not even a teenager, a midget player. So the coach came to me and he said, "Kevin, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, he's got the best player on the ice. Doesn't matter if he's 14 or not." I said, "If you're worried about anybody bothering him," I said, "just don't worry about it. You put him on the team, and I'll make sure nobody touches him." And that's what he did. He put him on the team. I went through the 5 teams at the start of the year. I said, "Anybody touches Marcel Dion," I said, "I'll kill you." And nobody touched him all year. So the year after that, we won the championship, the Quebec League that year in Drummondville. And then the following year, I went back for my training camp, and we're in training camp, and it was obvious that we didn't have a goaltender. We still had the same team. We didn't have Marcel Dion, but we had pretty well the other 19 guys were back. And our goalie went on he got hurt in a motorcycle accident or car accident, and he was out for the year. So the only goaltender that was available that they thought could bring a championship to Drummondville again was a guy in St. Jerome. So they made the deal. But the deal was I had to go to St. Jerome. So we had a couple of guys come in that he thought could take my place, and he made the deal and shipped me to St. Jerome for the Alouettes in the Metro Junior A Hockey League. So I went there, and I was finished school, so I got a part-time job. I used to work at a clothing store, go in at Friday at 12 to 2, and I got paid $200 a week for work. And we went on to win the league championship, and I won. I was the most valuable player. I was the MVP, defenseman, and I made the first All-Star team. So I had a heck of a year, and that's the year I was drafted by the New York Rangers, 35th overall in the NHL draft, first Nova Scotian ever taken in the draft. So after I got drafted, I was home for the summer, and I worked at Cape Breton Beverages, delivering pop. And I got my itinerary from the Rangers to report to camp in September, along with another 120 guys. And in September, I arrived at camp. We had our physicals and our ice time and everything, and our diets and what you could eat and what you couldn't eat. And I lasted 10 days, I think it was, 8 or 10 days, and then they shipped 5 of us to New Haven in the Eastern Hockey League, and then some to the American Hockey League, some to the Western Hockey League. There was guys all over the place. So I went to New Haven, and we played 5 games in 5 nights, and we had 5 guys that were auditioning for the tough guys spot. And I don't know if you can say I won it, but I got the job, and I spent a year in New Haven, and I fought everybody in the league that you'd see on Slapshot, the movie. Mike Ball and a few of those guys that come out at the end, they were all in the league at that time, and I ended up being the biggest goon of all. So, and I put some points up on the board too, so it wasn't too bad. Oh yeah, back then, there was no social media back then. There was no cameras. There was no whatever, and we had played 2 games that weekend at home. We lost 4-3 and 5-4, and we didn't think we played bad. The coach wasn't mad at us, so we couldn't have played bad, because otherwise he would have had us on the ice the next day skating. And the reporter, he spanked us in the paper, on Monday morning paper, and we used to have a party at Arrows after the game, because Sunday night the bars all closed. And Monday we'd go, it was our day off, we'd head right to the bar, and he had the nerve to show up, this guy Paul Marcellano, and the sports writer for the newspaper. We were feeling no pain. We were all mad at him, and we took him and we gagged him, we stripped him, we taped him hands behind his back, and we stood him in the bar window for 4 hours as his punishment for bullshitness. So then after, we took him out of the window, and had this little bowling machine in the corner, like you throw a little disc down, and things would pop up. So we had him on his back, and we put sawdust on the game, and we slid him by his feet down, and he'd hit the pins, and we'd pull him back and shoot him down again, and we did that with him for an hour. And then we all said we're leaving, so we left him there on the table, and we went to another bar, and the guy that owned the bar untaped him and took the sock out of his mouth, and he told him to behave yourself around the boys. He said, we can't have you laying around here naked. Oh, Billy Cal was the owner. Okay, we're playing in New Haven Arena, and we're playing against the Clinton Comets, and they had a few guys on their team that were pretty tough, and we had a brawl break out, and I ended up in 3 fights and kicked out of the game. And as I'm going to the dressing room, the coach comes over and he says, don't take off your skates. You're going to have to come back at the dressing room. If you go in and have a beer, don't have more than 2, and you'll get the call, you got to come back out. So anyway, halfway through the second period, I was only on my first beer, because I knew if I had to go back out and fight, I didn't want to be, tipsy. I wouldn't get tipsy on 2, but so I came back out, and I had 3 more fights, and I broke up a fight, and I separated the guy's shoulder breaking up the fight, and I separated another guy that was beating up our guy, and I separated his collarbone. So for all my work, I got suspended for 3 games, and the team paid all the fines, so I didn't mind that. So that was the end of the Clinton Comets. They wouldn't do anything when I was around. But I think there's a story there too, that we were playing in Clinton about 2 weeks later, after my 3 games were up, and we beat them in overtime, and I scored the goal from my own end. I went to ice the puck, but they pulled a goalie and it went in the net. So we won 5-4. So we're down in the corner, we're all patting each other on the back, and we're blah, blah, blah. And the only way off the ice was through the Zamboni door. So when we went down the island to go off the ice, the Zamboni door shut. They won't let us off the ice. So our coach has a brilliant plan. He said, Kevin, we're throwing you over the wire. Get down the other side, open the door so we can come in and help you. There's 30 or 40 people on the other side of that wire. And they're all throwing stuff at us, spitting at us, and whatever they had in their hand. I don't know what they had in their hands, but I said, that's a good plan. I said, can we vote on this? And all the boys said, yeah, you're going. So they put me up on the boards, up over the screen I go, and I come down the other side with skates flailing, stick flailing, whacking people and hitting people, spearing people, and I got the door open, and they pushed the gate, and they came in, and didn't rescue me, but we chased everybody down the hall away from us. So that was Clinton, and that's a nice rink to play in, but didn't want to visit it too often after that. We're in New Haven, we're in the playoffs, and we lost out in the Northern Division Finals. And back then, the Rangers were the New York Rangers were the team that owned us, and the 5 of us that were owned by the Rangers were sent to Omaha in the Central Hockey League because they were still playing in the playoffs. So when we got there, we played the last 5 games in the final over there, and we lost in the 5th game in overtime. So we were done. And Steve Durbano, who was drafted the same year as me with the Rangers, he was my roommate. So he came over and he said, "Get your stuff out of the room." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Get your stuff out of the room." He said, "Just get your stuff out of the room." I said, "Okay, don't get your balls in an uproar." So I went in and grabbed my suitcase and my shaving kit and all that, threw it in the bag, put it out, and Bruce Dupont said, What's going on?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "He told me to get my bag out of the room, so I'm not going to argue with him. I don't want to beat him up." And he went in and lit the bed on fire, lit the room on fire. That's how nuts he was. And he was my roommate. I had to sleep with one eye. I'm back at the New York Rangers training camp in September of the following year, and we went in and weighed in, Moose and I, and they said, "You guys are 20 pounds overweight." And I said, "I've weighed that the last 2 years. What do you mean I'm 20 pounds overweight?" And Moose said the same thing. And so we skated in the morning for 2 hours, in the afternoon for 2 hours, with the practices and the rest of the team. And then at night, Moose and I were the only 2 on the ice. And it was, he'd go down all the way down and back, and then I'd go all the way down and back. And we did that for the hour. And then they'd say, "Okay, you guys got eat salad, fruit cocktail, no beer, no pizza, no..." And they put us in the iron lung at night, which was like a casket with your head out, steam box. So 5 days in there, we lost like 12 pounds. Somebody skate by us, we'd fall down because we were that weak, not eating. And then Friday they said, "We're having our annual golf tournament. You guys you can play in the tournament. You got to walk, no beer, don't eat any of the food that's on the course for everybody. Have the salad and the fruit cocktail." The first time they see Moose and I were going across, we got a golf cart, we got a case of beer, we got 2 pizzas. Then we were sent down the next day, Monday. That was a Friday. So, so that was the second New York Ranger experience, and then they sent me back to New Haven and in the Eastern League, and we went further that year. We won our Northern Championship. We played for the league championship, and we lost in the final to Charlotte. And there was no call-ups then because Omaha was finished, and so that was it for the rest of the year. So my experience with the New York Rangers wasn't going very well, so I was offered a contract. I was a free agent, and I signed with Detroit Red Wings. So I went to there in 172. I went to the Detroit Red Wings training camp, and that's when they brought in, I don't know if you probably, nobody remembered the guy that was the general manager, but he was a local hero that was in the college hockey leagues and general managing and coaching, and they won everywhere he was, and so Detroit hired him. Ned Harkness was his name, and so he called me and Roger into his office before training camp, and he said, "We're going to change the culture of the Detroit Red Wings." And we said, "Yeah, what's that?" "I want you 2 guys to go out and beat up everybody in training camp to see who wants to stay and fight to be a Red Wing." And like Roger and I looked at each other and said, "I'm not doing that." And Roger said the same thing. "You're nuts." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We go out and do that in training camp, and then the regular season starts, and if I get in trouble, if the guy that's on the ice that I happen to just beat up is not going to jump in to help me." I said, "I'm not doing that." And Roger said the same thing. So it ended up where I lasted through training camp, so did Roger. Roger had played with Detroit the year before, so he made the big team, and they sent me down to Tidewater in the American League. So we're down in Tidewater, and I'm playing with this guy, Joey Johnson, and He was a career NHL, American Hockey League guy, and he was like, he wasn't a good fighter, but he'd fight anybody and everybody. So he's my defense partner. So for the first 15 games I'm in Tidewater, Joey's, something had happened, he'd jump in, get in a fight. Something happened, he'd jump in. So I never had a fight. I said, this is great. So Harkness comes in, he says, we're not happy. And I said, what do you mean? Well, you're not fighting. And I said, well, how can I fight? You put me with Buddy here, put me on another set of defensemen, No, we're going to send you to Fort Worth. We got a team in the Central Hockey League and the Fort Worth Red Wings, and we want you to go down there and get your aggressive game back. I said, okay. So I go to Fort Worth. I'm there, Central Hockey League, play 30 games. I had 32 fights. Harkness comes to town again. He calls me in the office, and I said, okay, what's going on now? He said, you're fighting too much. I said, what is wrong with you guys? I'm not fighting. I'm not fighting enough. I'm fighting too much. I'm going back in. Now you're sending me back to Tidewater because I'm fighting too much. I said, oh, this is great. So they sent me back to Tidewater. So we packed up, just got married that year before, so we had a trailer and a little, stuff in it, like TV and shit like that. And so we pulled into the parking lot. The bus is in the parking lot where the whole the apartment I'm getting is. So we get off there, and the boys are saying, come on, you got your gear? Yeah, I got my gear. Throw it on the bus. And I said, wait, now I got to empty the trailer, throw the wife up in the apartment. So all the guys get off the bus, grab the box, grab stuff, throw it all up in the apartment, get back on the bus. We're 3-4 hours into the trip. Coach goes down to use the bathroom. I'm down the back playing cards. He looks at me, he says, what are you doing here? I said, what? What do you mean, what am I doing here? I said, Harkness sent me back here. No, he says, we loaned you to Rochester. American Hockey League, Don Cherry. I said, well, that's nice of somebody to tell me. And the bus just happened to be going to Rochester for a game. So all the boys in the back are going, we're going to play against you? We had nothing to do with this. They're all sitting there, they're all getting their game faces ready for the next night. So we get to Rochester, and I get off the bus, and I said bye to the boys. See you on the ice, I said. Had my gear on my shoulder. I walked in the Rochester American dressing room and met Mr. Don Cherry. So it was good from then on. We had a good time. Got along good with him. So after, that was the end of that year. The following year, I went to Minnesota camp, starting those summers in '72. Yeah, where I was invited to coach at the Sussex Valley Hockey School in Sussex, New Brunswick, and that took up our summers every year for 6 to 8 weeks. And what you had to do, you had to either work somewhere or you had to work a hockey school. So I lucked out. Junior Hanna and Parker got me into the Sussex one, and met some nice people there and some nice horse racing guys that had horse racing, and got along good and enjoyed it there. It was really nice. Yeah, I signed with Minnesota as a free agent because I didn't see Harkness going anywhere with Detroit. So I went to Minnesota camp, and I met a nice Navy SEAL that was brought in to train us. So, and I looked at him, and like they were trying to run us up and down the stadium stairs and around the tops and around and up and down the stairs. I said, boy, I got bad knees. I can't do that. I went sucking on the one guy, the weak link of the two. So finally he said, all right, just hide in the bathroom. I'll get you when you come out. So for 3 weeks I hid in the bathroom. Didn't have to do any running, no stairs, no steps. Go out on the ice, ready, fit, good to go. And we get in there, and then like Minnesota, their farm team was Cleveland. So we practiced, myself and a couple of the other tough guys, we practiced with their international team. And we'd play against the American League Cleveland team, and we'd run them out of the rink. So they bring all the guys from the international team up, and then they're going to put us with the Barons, and we're going to start the league in the season in the American Hockey League with Cleveland. And I said, well, if I'm going to the American Hockey League, I want to go to New Haven. They got an American Hockey League team this year, and I played there for a couple of years already, and I'd like to go back to New Haven. So they made the deal, they loaned me to New Haven for the year. So I ended up getting back to New Haven and playing the first year with the Nighthawks, and Parker McDonald from Sydney was my coach. So. Okay, well, let's start with when I arrived in New Haven in the American League with the Nighthawks. They brought in Willie O'Ree, He was a veteran. He played mostly in the Western Hockey League, but played in the American Hockey League. He was the first black person to play in the NHL. And we were affiliated with the New York Islanders. And most of the roster at that time was Billy Smith, the goaltender, Bobby Nystrom, Gary Howitt, and all their draft picks. They were all playing in New Haven. So I got to meet all those guys, play with those guys. Terry Gray, Jerry Gray, so like it was, I was the only odd duck. Willie and I were, like, he was on loan and I was on loan. So then the season started and we had, like I said, Nystrom and Howard, they were two tough cookies. They'd fight anybody and hold their own. And we had a brawl one night against Rochester, Don Cherry's Rochester, and he had Battleship Kelly, and him and I squared off, and round one, I gave him round one. I was too far out, and I should have been inside, and a couple of licks on the side of the head wakes you up, and you get in tight, and I got in tight, and they broke us up. Bobby Nystrom got in a fight down the corner, so the linesman left Battleship and I said, come on, I wasn't happy. So we had a second fight, and I think I taught him a lesson, the second fight. So then they come out, the linesmen come back up after they broke that fight up. They broke us up, they separated us. Gary Howard gets in a fight down the other corner, and they leave us again. And I said, well, it's 1-1. Let's finish it off right now. Let's get her going. So I ended up cutting him on both eyes. I had his lip bleeding. I tore his sweater off. I tore his shoulder pads off him. I thought I vandalized him, but everybody, when he went to the bench after the fight, Cherry raised his hand, and I went right out of my mind. I said, you raise, and Parker's there. And I said, why'd you raise my hand? My rink. And all the boys were saying, geez, don't even worry about it. You kicked the shit out of him, But it wasn't that point. The point was he raised his hand, and I was still vicious. So anyway, 2 weeks later, we're playing in Rochester, and that's when it was on headlines in the paper. Heavyweight rematch tonight, Morrison, Kelly. And so we get to the rink, and, the thing is, everybody, you go to the rink, bus pulls up at 5 o'clock, you go in to make sure the ice is frozen, so we got that done. I'm standing there, Hook comes up and stands beside me, but Kelly. And I said, listen, buddy, we're going first shift. I said, there's no way in hell he should have raised your hand. You didn't win the fight. I said, you run round one, I had 2 and 3. Oh, no, I just want to talk to you. He says, you got a Lazopso dog. I got a Lazopso dog. So I'm not talking fucking dogs, which, excuse my language. We're going, first shift. So we're in warm-up. I'm skating around. I'm looking. I said, oh, that guy's new. Oh, that guy's new. Oh, big boys, too. 2 big guys. I said, all right. So I can see what's going to go on. So the first shift, not warm-up, the guy's poking at me, not poking at me, but he said, you and I are going, Morrison. He said, you're not that tough. First shift. He said, you and I are fighting. I said, buddy, come and see me if you get a shift. So anyway, he started, and he just left his gloves at the red line. I was on the blue line. Time he got to me, I had my gloves off, and I taught him a lesson. And so we got 5 minutes in the box, sitting there. Come out of the box, the other guy's standing there waiting. His gloves off. So now 2 fights back, like they changed the rules. Like the Eastern League, you could fight 6 times, 3 times, 4 times, and not get kicked out of the game. But anyway, 2 fights, you got 2 5s, a 10, and a game. I'm out of the game. So now I got to go by their bench to get to the dressing room. So when I got down by the bench, I'd look for Kelly, and he was like looking around like he lost his contact. And then I looked up to Cherry, and Cherry was like this, staring up at the lights. And I said, yeah. And that was the last time we ever played against you. Never had another chance to fight him again. To set the record straight. But Don Cherry did say in one of his articles that it was the best fights he ever saw, like 2 guys do in his career. So that was a little. He always said that I said, you got to write that story, right in the book. You got to come back and fix that. Oh yeah, next book. And this is 3rd book later. It's still not fixed.
Kevin Morrison, what a guy. I had him on the club. Was he a tough guy? I remember him at Battleship Kelly. He could throw them.
Long arms. I remember you and I were in Stephenville, Newfoundland, and we were doing Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada, drinking Black Horse beer, remember?
Oh, great stuff.
And Kevin, I understand, was the Eastern representative in the championship final with Colorado. Lanny McDonald's the Western representative.
We won't talk about
so your
that,
whole
Kevin.
team had a chug-a-lug, and it got down to Kevin and Lanny. Who won?
I can't say it. I can't
Why?
say it because it's his birthday today. But I'll tell you one thing. Lanny, when he was through, he said, whoop. He whipped the thing. He says, well, let's have another one. Crack me another one, schmutzy. Anyhow, Kevin, you're a great guy. I'm glad I had you on the club. I wish I had more like you.
Absolutely revered, too, in Newfoundland. Everybody down there in Stephenville can't say enough about you, so happy birthday.
The World Hockey was next. They came calling. Well, the first year of the World Hockey, I was drafted by the Los Angeles Sharks. But they didn't contact me. I got a letter saying that my rights are owned by the Los Angeles Sharks. So I think a lot of guys, they didn't jump right away because they weren't sure if it was going to last. So once they got 1 year completed, then they traded my rights to New York Golden Blades were the second team, the Raiders, then the Golden Blades. And then they traded my rights to Cleveland. And then they got my rights back from Cleveland, so I ended up back being a Golden Blade. So I went to New York Golden Blade training camp, and Harry Howell was he was playing, and Camille Henry used to be with the Rangers. He was the coach, and I settled right in. It seemed like I came I don't know, like I woke up and I could realize I could skate and shoot with these guys and play with them, and I didn't just have to hit and fight all the time. But it was a nice backup asset to have, and I started the year, and we lasted. Maybe a month and a half. I played at the Madison Square Garden, and then we moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And it was a practice rink for the Flyers. Only sat about 1,000 people. Chicken wire all around it. Moguls on the ice. Dressing rooms too small for like a professional team to get in. You'd see Gordie Howe and Bobby Hull getting off the bus with all their gear on and their skates over their shoulders, walking in to play in this rink. And like you said, there was no mesh on the sides. You could pick guys up and give them a little bump, and they'd end up in the stands. And we had the Zamboni pull out to clean the ice one day, and it died, and the auger was still going around. Made a big hole right down to the concrete and the ice. They had to come out with buckets of ice and fire extinguishers to try to get the ice hard enough so we could continue the game. And that was our experience with the New Jersey Golden Knights. I had 16 goals at one point, and the publicist for the team came down and said, "You just need one more goal to tie the record." I said, "What record?" He said, "Last year, Bert Crashley had 16 goals for a defenseman in the WHA." So I said, "Well, that was something to work on." So I got the 17th, and then he came up and he said, "Oh, no, it was 18, sorry." So I got the 18th, so I said I tied the record. Then he came back and he said, I said, "You sure it's 18 now? I don't want to be chasing another." But anyway, I finished with 24 goals that year, so that was quite the accomplishment, and nobody ever came close to. Well, I was the only defenseman ever in the World Hockey to score 20 goals. I did it 3 times, so that was great. Nice accomplishment. Well, from New Jersey, our owner was from Baltimore, and he had moved us to New Jersey. So he was looking for us to play it up, and he couldn't get a deal done. He was going to move us to Baltimore originally, and he couldn't get a deal done with the rink there. So someone said that San Diego, they had lost their minor league team, and the rink there sat 12,000 people. So we ended up moving from Cherry Hill, New Jersey to San Diego, California, which was a bonus for us guys. So great spot, and we got the training camp in San Diego, and we had our farm team there, and the farm team was from the old Eastern League, so they had a lot of tough guys, and we had a training camp bench clearing brawl to welcome us to San Diego. The fans loved it, so we had a big poster made. Mad, mean, menacing Mariners, and all the gloves and sticks were scattered all over the ice, and it was a big. I showed you the poster; it's a big thing. So then we had the season started, and I think that year I had 20 goals and 61 assists. I had a point a game. We finished second in our division, and I made the first All-Star team that year.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Hartford Civic Center and the 5th Annual World Hockey Association All-Star Game, hosted by your New England Whalers. Now, let's meet the 1977 World Hockey Association West Division All-Stars. Always a top-scoring defenseman, a rugged performer making his second All-Star appearance. From the San Diego Mariners, number 4, Kevin Morrison. A defenseman's defenseman.
And we went to the first All-Star game we went to. When Normie Ferguson from Sydney was on it. Him and I played together like 5 years. And at the All-Star game, we had 5 guys from San Diego that made it. Normie and I and Andre Lacroix, Joe Norris, and Paul Schmier. And then we had Gordie Howe and Bobby Hull were in that All-Star game. And we had our picture, Normie and I had our picture taken with them. And it's hanging in the Nova Scotia Hall of Fame. You know, so it was great. And the following year in San Diego, we were back. We were battling for first place all year. And I had a knee injury that year. So I had finished with 8 goals and some points. I didn't have a good year at all that way. But we made the playoffs and played Winnipeg. Didn't beat them. So the third and final year in San Diego, I had another 20-year-old goal scorer season, and we played Houston for the semifinals. They beat us out, and then they won the championship, so it wasn't too bad. If you lose out to somebody, you want them to win the cup. You know, so we folded at the end of that year. So the team disbanded, and my rights were picked up by Edmonton, the Oilers, and I said, well, I don't want to go to Edmonton because the exchange on the dollars back then wasn't good. It was costing too much money. So I requested a trade, so they traded me to Indianapolis. So I went to the Indianapolis Racers, and that's where I met Mr. Gretzky, and he played with us for about 3 weeks or a month after a training camp in the first few games, and I set up his first professional goal. I used to like carrying the puck a lot, so I picked the puck up behind our net, and I went up and carried it down into the other end and around behind the net, and I slid it out front, and he picked it up on his backhand, scored his first goal. So it was at 10:04, the second period of his first hockey game. Assist Morrison, the only one on it, so it was great. So had I went to Edmonton, I wouldn't have got that. So now I got that little feather I can throw in my hat for ever, you know. So then they...
Sorry. He's a liar.
So they had...
That's not what happened. Tell Matt what actually happened.
Well, the true story is, I had the puck behind the net, and he cut it inside our blue line. He picked it up, and he went down and did it all himself. Doesn't sound as good, though.
No, but
I think he only lasted 6 games, if that. Then they traded him and Eddie Meal and Peter Driscoll to Edmonton for cash. So we went another month or so. And then me and Richard Leduc and I forget the other guy's name. He was a minor leaguer. They sold the 3 of us to Quebec Nordiques for cash to keep the Racers going for the rest of the year. And they ended up folding in January. So I mean, wouldn't have made any difference. We would have been gone anyway. But so now I'm in the Quebec Nordiques, and no, we finished the year there. I had 17 goals and 40-some assists with the Racers that year at the end of the year, and then I'm with the Nordiques. So there's myself, and there's Wally Weir, and there's Kurt Brackenberry, Gilles Bilodeau, Jim Dory played for Toronto Maple Leafs. I had about 7 guys that could fight like hell, and we're at home. We couldn't get on the ice, go on the road, couldn't get off the ice. Some of the guys didn't like playing on the road, so they kept us around as we were the road team, you know. So I wasn't happy there. I wasn't happy in Quebec at all. I played there 3 years with Drummondville and St. Jerome, but that experience with the Nordics wasn't sitting right. So I said, move me somewhere. I said, I don't want to stay here. So they sent me to the Philadelphia Firebirds in the American Hockey League. And I went down there and we got to come up into Haven, play against the Nighthawks, and had a half decent year. And then talked to Cherry a few times. And over the years, like with San Diego and Indianapolis and Philly, he was coaching Boston, and he wanted me to go to Boston. So I want you to come to Boston and play defense with Orr. I said, yeah, I'd love to. I said, what's the money? And he'd say, oh, you gotta talk to Harry Sinden about that. I said, yeah, well, have Harry call me. So Sinden calls me, and he didn't like the WHA at all. Didn't want anybody back from there on our terms. So he said, what are you making? I said, I'm making $80,000. I'll offer you $35,000. And I said, I know I'm a stupid Cape Bretoner. I said, but that math doesn't work. Well, he said, I said, well, can we make it up in bonuses? You know, make up to, no, that's $45,000. He's like, that's a lot of bonuses. No, take it or leave it. I said, I didn't even answer him. I just hung up. So Cherry called me back, and he said, what happened? You hung up on him. I said, he offered me 35 grand. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no. He said, I told him what you were making. I said, get him close, like get me 65, and give me enough to make bonuses like aggressive play, hitting, points. I can make the 15 grand up that way. Nope, didn't offer that. Offer me 30. I said, offer me 35. So he said, I'll call you back. So 2 weeks later, he called me back. He had him up to 40. He went up to 40. I said, no, I'm not going. So don't bother calling me back unless you're at 65 with some bonuses, you know. Well, he never called. And Jerry, when he went to Colorado, Jerry called me up. He said, I got you 1 year deal, 85, I think it was. I said, okay, I'll be there. So got to training camp with the Colorado Rockies, and Cherry's there, and your first day of skate was always put your new gear on and make sure everything fits, and go for just a little twirl, make sure your skates are sharp. And so we're skating around, and the goalies are out there, and 6 goalies on the ice. So Cherry says, come here. I said, what? Stand right there. And he called over Mike Wilf Paymont and Mike Christie and Trevor, Joel Quinville and Trevor Johansson. They play with the Maple Leafs and that. Just want a witness, because he always wanted a witness. He called the scouts and the owner and the general manager and all the guys down to the glass, and he said, we need a goalie. And I said, what do you mean we need a goalie? We got Michel Plas, we got Hardy Astrom, played in the Swedish National League, brought him and his 29 family members over from Sweden. 2 draft picks, McKenzie and this other guy. And Cherry said, trade the 6 of them and get me 1 good one. And he skated away. And then all year, that's what killed us. We only won 20 games, but we lost another 20 because of the goaltending. That Astrom couldn't, like, he'd jump out in front of the Zamboni, go between his legs. And then he was there one night, and he was Montreal was in town. We were out shooting them 38-14, and they were beating us 6-1. So he wanted under the net. He's waving at Cherry's. I want under the net. So I went over and I said, what do you want? He said, tell Don I want out. So I go over and what does that effing Swede want? I said, he wants to come out. He said, if he moves out of that crease, you punch him in the mouth. So I go down. I said, come on. What? You know, because I wouldn't give it to him. I wouldn't give it. But he wouldn't move. He stayed in the net. But he was like, I mean, practice, you couldn't get a BB by him. And put him in the game, and he couldn't stop the Zamboni. Like Cherry had this drill where we go from the face-off dot, like a semicircle, like out to the blue line, and rapid fire, 2 pucks, all the way back. Couldn't beat him. Then you move in, and couldn't beat him. You wouldn't be until you're like 10 feet from him, rapid fire, like that you'd get a few by him. But then you put him in the game, he couldn't catch a cold. He would not. And they brought him and his mother and his father and his grandmother, grandfather, tutors, flew everybody home at Christmas time, brought them all back, and the money they spent on that, you know. But that was it wasn't the icing on the cake. I think the cake came later. We were playing in Philly, and I had a separated collarbone, and Nick Beverly had a Charlie horse. So we're going to Philly to play. And everybody has the flu because the Broad Street bullies. So comes to Nick and I and says, "You guys got to play in Philly." I said, "I got one arm." "Yeah, well, you hit with that arm." "Oh, and Nick, you stay in front of the net and move the puck, and we'll be all right." "Oh yeah, you're not on the ice." So Schultz and Selesky and the other Kelly, the other Bob Kelly, and Hound Dog and Paul Holmgren, and so anyway, we got there and we survived. So we're at the hotel after the game, and boys were playing cards, and I went down to grab some food, and I'm in this. Lanny fell asleep in the bed, and I'm in picking up the food, and I look, and there's this big chocolate cake there. Like, I said, "Oh, wouldn't that look good on Lanny?" Laying in bed asleep. So I said, "How much for the cake?" "Oh, you don't want that. It's 2 days old." I said, "Oh, I'll give you $5 for it." I said, "It's not for eating." So she put it in the box, and I took it and had the food, and I think Trevor was with me, and we're walking back, and somebody came out of the room because I had taken it out of the box when we got up on the floor, and come over, and I had the food in this hand, the cake in this hand, so I couldn't do anything. So he grabbed a big handful of cake and started mushing it on me, and then, so that was it. The cake fight was on in the hallway. So we had cake going everywhere. It was on the walls. It was in the carpet. And I got saved some. I got down on it. I hit Manning down in there in the bed. So the fight was on down in that room with the cake, and we pulled the fire hose out of the wall down the other end, and we're trying to wash all the stuff off because it looked like shit. And we flooded 3 floors, and we tried to wipe it off, but the more we wiped it, the worse it looked. So we just said we're going to go down to housekeeping in the morning, and we're going to offer to pay whatever it is to clean it up. So I think we got charged $150 each, like $600 it was to clean it all up, and because they thought it was shit that was on the walls. But I said, "No, it was chocolate cake." I said we wouldn't do that, but shit. But so anyway, Jerry got fired because he couldn't control his players when they were on the road. So he got a better gig after that anyway. Hockey Night in Canada and Rock'em Sock'ems and all that stuff. So
nobody's more into hockey than I am. And here's something else I'm really into. My new GLC from Westcott Mazda. It's a great little car.
And Glace Bay were having a fundraiser for the Children's Ward out at their hospital, and they asked if I'd play in it. It was a shinny game. Like, I don't even wear gear. And there's no hitting, there's no slap shot. So I had gloves and elbow pads on and a pair of shin pads and a cup. That was it. No shoulder pads, no pants. And this Yahoo comes 3 feet from me, and all of a sudden he wants to tee one up and take a slap shot. And cracked my ankle. Boom, gone. So I drove home. I didn't know it was broken until the next day, but I had a bad idea. I had it in the ice for all night next day, and went in and had an x-ray. "Yeah, it's cracked." "You're gone," he said. "You can't." That was it. I didn't have a contract, so I was out for a year. So then the next year, I'm just starting to get back on the ice and skating a little bit, and I had a few offers from the American League, but nothing major. And I had a head-on collision right on the corner of Townsend and Union. The guy came up the wrong side in the wintertime, and boom, head-on, snapped the ankle, same spot. I'm gone 2 years now. So now I'm going to be 33 years old, and I've been out of hockey 2 years, so the prospects weren't bright. Moncton offered me $500 to move the wife and the kids and go up there. So I'm not going there for $500. Not worth it. So I was back. I skated with the Sydney Merchants for 1 game because Blair called me and he said, "There's a guy here from Newfoundland. He wants to see if you're mobile. He'll take you to Newfoundland." So I played the 1 game, and they looked at me and they said, "You're still not in shape." I said, "No." I said, "I'm getting on the ice though 4 times a week right now. I just started back." So they said, "Nope, we'll come back and see you in a month's time." So they came back, and we were playing in just a scrub game, the Crazy Eights on a Monday night. And they looked and they said, "Yeah, you want to come to Stephenville?" So I went to Stephenville, and I played over there for 7 seasons. I only went over that first year I played the playoffs. That's all I played was towards the Allen Cup. And we hosted one year in Stephenville. We lost, it was a best of 5. We lost in 5 games. And then the following year we played the same team up in Ontario, Kitchener Waterloo, and we went up there and we lost in 5 games up there. So we had overall, the hockey was unbelievable. The teams were like a lot of guys that were just like late cuts from the American League team, and I mean that old Stephenville rink. It was a plane hangar. We'd have 4,000 people in there for like just a regular season game. Playoffs, they'd be hanging from everywhere. You know, like amazing. You know, and then the town was behind everybody, and they used to follow us on the road, and I really enjoyed it. Thought it was good. I was on Indianapolis Racers, and he was with the Birmingham Bulls, and there's probably maybe 4 or 5 guys on the team. They brought them from Minnesota, and all the guys that fought in Minnesota. In Slapshot, they had the Carlson brothers. Well, it was the Hanson brothers in the movie, but there were 3 Carlsons, and then Dave Hansen and Durbano, and they had another guy there. So we had 5 guys on our team that would fight. We would have to play a second shift because they'd send the 5 goons out, and if there was no fights, they send the other 5 out. So we had to stay on the ice. So anyway, we had a little thing in the corner, and I got put in the penalty box. They just said, you and Kevin Devine had a fight, so him and I were in the box. And Durbano was already in the box. So I was skating by to go to the box, and he said something. I said, you go. Excuse my language. But, you know, I said, who the fuck do you think you are? You know, set a hotel on fire, I said. He went nuts. He jumped out of the box, and he's coming at me, and the referee saying, don't do nothing. You're not at the game yet. He's gone. If you do anything, I'm throwing you at the game. So he kept coming at me, kept mauling at me. He kind of scratched me one time, and at the end of it, the referee kind of had him lined up, and he was right in front of me, and I said, hello, and I tagged him with a right hook that shook the world. And he went down, the linesman went down, they were sliding over the way, and that was the Steve Durbano. Not his brightest move. I think that's the name of it. Yeah, I just sometimes the body just tells you. You know, I was having trouble with my knees, and it's no fun after a game. You got to sit there with 2 ice packs on both knees for half an hour, and then you get up and you're seized up because they're frozen, and it's just not. You're not comfortable. I wasn't comfortable, and I knew I had to get new. Like you can see the replacements, and just stopped being fun. Like I had to wait 8 years before I got to the point where I could get the replacements, and it was just too. I had to drink 24 beer to get to bed, or I had to take a shot of something to knock me out, or soma, or so it just wasn't worth the wear and tear anymore. So I decided to give that up.
Nobody's more into hockey than I am. And here's something else I'm really into. The new GLC from Westcott Mazda. It's a great little car.
Okay, so I was playing in Newfoundland, and I get a call, and I thought it was the Cape Breton Hall of Fame. And here it was the Cape Breton Wall of Fame. It's at Center 200. So they said, well, dinner's on Saturday. Can you be here? So the boys used to fly me over. So I said, all right, I can't make Saturday. I'm getting inducted in the Cape Breton Hall of Fame, and I can fly over Sunday and play the game Sunday, and then fly me home Monday. So they were all right with that. I missed the game. So I was in the Cape Breton Wall of Fame. Then it was about 2 years later we realized it wasn't the Cape Breton Hall of Fame. So I got back in, and Donnie put the stuff in, and I got elected to the Cape Breton Hall of Fame. And so I was in, that's number 2. So I said, that's nice. That was a nice tribute, locally. And then in 2001, the Nova Scotia Hall of Fame came calling, and I was inducted into the Nova Scotia Hall of Fame, and we went up for that, and that was a nice, Pat Conley was there, and a few other people that, that had some stories to tell, and so I've been to the Nova Scotia Hall of Fame. And then last year, I get a call from Newfoundland, and I didn't know that they kept stats, like defenseman stats and goals and points and everything, and they called me up and said, you're the 3rd highest scorer defenseman in Newfoundland hockey history. And I said to myself, if I had known you were keeping stats, I would have tried harder. I would have went for number 1, but no, they come over. I didn't make it because they had it in Grand Falls, and to get there, it's like a voyage through the Arctic to get to St. John's and to go down to Gander and then go in there and then back out. And so I said no. And then they were talking about retiring one of the sweaters in Stephenville, and they were going to register, like have me come over And I'd rather see all those guys when they do the sweater, 'cause the guys I played with. None of them are going to be in Gander. So I've been inducted into the Newfoundland Sport Hockey Hall of Fame. So I got 2 more to get, and then I'm done. I want the Maritime Hockey Hall of Fame, which is once you're into Nova Scotia, apparently you're automatic, but I haven't seen it yet. And I want the World Hockey Hall of Fame.